Well, I'd like to talk to you about the whole subject of anxiety. And anxiety is probably one of the biggest mental health problems in the Western world. And so I want to just talk today to help you understand what's causing it and how to not only manage it, but actually overcome it. And when we say anxiety, we're usually talking about some different symptoms, some different experiences that the body has when you suffer from anxiety. And so we can break this down into physical symptoms, thinking symptoms, and feeling symptoms. The physical symptoms would be things like a racing heart, feeling on edge, or even feeling a bit nauseous. The thinking symptoms would be worrying a lot, just maybe having a foggy brain, or even just finding ourselves thinking of what's the worst thing that could happen. And then the feeling symptoms would be feelings of being overwhelmed, struggling on the inside, maybe crying a lot, maybe just feeling just unable to relax. So many different symptoms, but those would be the main things. And it's quite normal to worry when we're facing difficult situations, especially with the whole global pandemic of coronavirus. It's quite normal. All of us go through times when we are concerned about the future. We're concerned when we hear things on the news. But when worry becomes anxiety, it's where the whole process of thinking about these things and the physical symptoms are uncontrollable. It dominates your life, and so you find that it interferes with your work, with your family life, it interferes with sleep. Let's just understand what's going on, because I really have found that when people understand why they get these symptoms, why worry overwhelms them and overtakes them, then they know how they can find the relief. So to understand anxiety, let's have a look at the brain, because it's inside the brain that everything is going on to make us go into the whole area of anxiety. So the brain is a very complex, amazing substance, but there are two areas you need to know about to understand anxiety. First is we have an area at the front of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. And this takes up a large part of our brain, and it's very important because we use that part of the brain most of the time. It's where we think, it's where we reason, we decide if this is right, if this is wrong. We decide if something is wise or not wise. It helps us to make decisions about our life on a moment by moment, day by day basis. But there's also another important part of our brain, and it's called the amygdala. It's a very tiny part of the brain. It's only as big as an almond, but it's very powerful. That part of the brain is also called our fear center, it's also called the stress center. So two things. It's called the fear center. It's also called the stress center, depending on which book you're reading. But what the amygdala does is when it's activated, it switches our body into what we call fight or flight, or the stress response. So whenever we see any danger, whenever we hear maybe a worrying noise, or we see something that's very alarming and we know that we have to escape from that danger, straight away, without us even thinking about it, the amygdala is triggered, sets in motion a whole series of changes in our body, such as our heart beats faster, blood is pumped to all our different parts of the body, particularly our muscles in our legs so that we can run. We find that we breathe faster and a whole lot of other things. But that's the stress response, which is very important to get us out of danger. But when the danger passes, the amygdala is supposed to settle down and our stress response is supposed to switch off. And then we go into rest and relax mode. So I'm sure you're familiar with that fight and flight or rest and relax. So at any time, our body is only meant to be in one or the other. But here's the problem. When we are faced with big challenges, when we are faced with worries, when we are faced with the future and we don't know how it's going to turn out, and we find ourselves thinking about things that could go wrong, that could happen, our brain interprets that we are in a stress mode, that we are in fight and flight. So the stress response is activated. And so that's why as blood rushes around the body, that's why you feel your heart is racing. That's why you feel a bit nauseous, because changes happen in your gut. So what science has found is that if we are someone who has a tendency to worry, who has a tendency to anxiety, it's found that if those people practice a technique called a breathing technique, the best one is called 3-4-5 breathing, and practice it many times a day, their brains switch from stress mode to rest mode. So I'm going to just ask you to practice that with me right now, and you're going to see how different you feel after we practice this. Okay, let's go for it. Ready? So you breathe in for 3 seconds through your nose. You hold for 4 seconds. And then you breathe out through your mouth for 5 seconds. The secret is that the out breath has to be longer than the in breath. And what happens is that when we breathe like that, when we breathe deeply, it triggers a particular nerve that goes to our brain and tells our brain, go into rest mode. So let's just practice that. Ready? Let's try it all together. Okay, breathe in for 3 seconds. Hold for 4 seconds. Now breathe out for 5 seconds. How do you feel? You're already starting to feel a bit more relaxed than you were before. And if you did that for 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the afternoon, 5 minutes in the evening, your body will be training itself to keep switching into rest mode. And you will find that slowly but surely your anxiety levels will start to go down. But I also want to just share with you just 2 other tips to help you in this season. So as I said, number 1 is breathing, but number 2 is to practice gratitude. And it's amazing, science has now found that being grateful people, practicing gratitude is very good for our minds. Well, the Bible has been saying this for thousands of years. The Bible is full of giving thanks to God and being thankful people. So if you would just practice, maybe in the evening, you sit with your family and you go around and you say, hey, let's just give thanks for one thing today. Maybe if you do that as a habit before you go to sleep, it will definitely start to reduce your anxiety levels. And the third thing is to limit the amount of news that you watch. Unfortunately, the news is full of bad news. Yes, a lot of the time they do tell us the facts, but also a lot of the time there's a lot of projection. Well, this might happen, that might happen, this might go wrong, that might go wrong. And all it does is sets off the stress response in your brain. So limit yourself to maybe just 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening of looking at the news. But practice the things that I've taught you. I forgot to say that the breathing response, actually the Bible tells us a lot of the time about rest. Psalm 23 is a psalm of rest, of just laying down beside the still waters. What that's saying is that if we enter a period of rest, which actually involves breathing slower and deeper, our bodies will find rest. So the Bible is just confirming what science is discovering now. And all I would also add is that you have to also tell yourself, because your thoughts are very powerful, you need to tell yourself, my future is going to be bright. This season will come to an end. Things will get even better than they were before. My life is going to be better than it was before because I trust in God, and God is a good God, and He always makes us thrive. He leads us into better things. So you've got to speak those sort of words over yourself every day, and you will find that your mind will slowly come to a place of rest. And I'll just throw in this last thing. If you are someone who suffers a lot with anxiety, it's always wise to see your own doctor and just get an assessment, because sometimes we need medication to help us while we get our minds starting to work in a better and a more healthy way. Okay, so that's all for now. See you with the next video. Thank you.